Bienvitx to
MERENDIANDO! This week, our guest is talented, multidisciplinary artist and evolving spirit, bhakomen.
Bhakomen is a poet, playwright, photographer, filmmaker, and currently an acting student at the National Theatre School of Canada.
Is an Afro-Latinx artist from Toronto, and in the city, they've presented and developed work at TIFF's Next Wave Festival, Tarragon's Young Playwrights Unit, and Soul Pepper's City Youth Academy, among lots of others.
In this episode, we talk about the power of identity, their journey in theater and arts training, the influence of family and history on their art, and how Victoria Santa Cruz saved their life. It was such a good conversation that we didn't want to stop. So this episode is longer than our usual episodes, but also because the season is coming to an end, we said, let's keep it. Let's have this long conversation this time. But we'll come back with one last episode to say goodbye.
Yeah, we're going to do a little wrap up. We're going to maybe hear from some Maluna staff. We're going to keep it a cool surprise for you. But for now, grab your snack, grab your water. You know what to do. You know how this works. And let's dive into the episode. Hi, Isi.
Hello.
Welcome to MERENDIANDO.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this is a question that we usually kick things off with. MERENDIANDO is like family snack time. So, Isi, what has been your merienda or snack these days? Your go-to pandemic snack?
My go-to pandemic snack right now is actually grapefruit.
Oh.
Yeah, we were talking about grapefruits earlier, but yeah, I just eat it with the spoon. Just take the yummy, fleshy grapefruit and just eat it by itself. But the person I'd want to share it with would be my grandparents, because they both passed away and I never got to talk to them. I got to meet my grandfather, but he had Alzheimer's. So communicating with him was difficult because my Spanish wasn't very good. But yeah, those are the people who I want to share my grapefruit with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like fruit, there's this meme I saw that fruit is a love language in Latinx culture. Like fresh fruit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Things grow differently from the places that we come from.
They really do. Okay, cool. So, Isi, you have said to us that you are a multidisciplinary artist, but you can't stick to one medium. And you don't know why, which is very interesting. So, which mediums are you using these days?
Well, right now in isolation, I've been writing a lot and I've been sketching a lot in my sketchbook. So a lot of visual and like inner thoughts are ways of like expressing what I'm going through right now. But like a big thing that I'm focusing on like broadly is acting, because I'm in theater school right now. So trying to unpack that process for myself has been a really big thing for me. But yeah, a lot of writing and drawing. But I do photography as well. But I left my camera in Montreal, so I can't take pictures, which has been really frustrating. And I'm going to be working on a film soon. Later this next month, I'm going to start working on it July 4th with the Insomniac Film Festival, which is like a youth-led filmmaking program that started by just like a few teenagers coming together and wanting to create space for themselves to create films and not have like kind of, I don't want to say like a judgment from, but sometimes like adults like kind of, now that I'm an adult, I'm 22, but like older people have like this idea of like young people don't really know what they're talking about, yet their voices are so valid. So to be able to express yourself and explore your voice through film with people your own age, I think is really valuable. So yeah, I've been like preparing for that as well. So not just writing and drawing, but also like preparing myself to work on a film. And because we're in isolation and we can't be with each other physically, so it'll be interesting to know how to direct people from a distance. Those are like a lot of the things that I'm playing with right now.
That was a question I had when you said like as an actor right now, how do you manage to direct yourself in isolation, or like do you get somebody else to direct yourself? Yeah,
because like a lot of my films I'm the actor and director in it, so like it's a lot of like, okay, you do the scene and then you look at the camera and like, okay, I don't like how that went. I have to like, I'm trying to explain your vision, but also having to execute it is really hard.
Yeah.
But something that I'm also playing with right now is getting feedback from other people, because being so like engulfed in everything that you're trying to create, sometimes you need kind of a criticism, or like not criticism, but like just an outside eye. So when I was working on Black Girl in Search of God, like my friends from the Insomniac Film Festival and also from TIFF, as their youth group, they would like, I'd work on it, set like a draft of my film, and then they would give me critiques on things that they think would help push my message further or make it more clear. So I think when you are the actor, director, editor, like doing all the things, it's important to have other people be a part of that process, because the thing that I love about theater is how collaborative it is. That you're working with the scenographer, you're working with the production, you're working with the director. It's like all these elements coming together. Yeah. So that's a huge thing for me when it comes to my acting process for film.
Well, how did you get into film? Like, what prompted you to start making movies?
Back when I was younger and was interested in theater, like, because I went to Market Lane Public School, is near the Distillery District, so Soul Pepper was really close, and they came to my school when I was in elementary school, and I met Paula Wing, who's like a longtime like friend that I cherish her so much. If it wasn't for her, I would not be in theater at all. But I think I didn't see acting or like theater as a profession. Like, so I went to university in 2016 to study English, but that also wasn't satisfying me. And I ended up actually getting kicked out of university because I was doing so badly. And I decided I went to Peru, and I remember picking up my camera and I started taking pictures of my family members. And that was like the first time I was like, oh, like I never see pictures of Afro-Peruvians. And like I just like took that in, and so like a huge part of my photography is like documenting the people who like mean the world to me, is my family, or people who look like me or go or like I just feel like there's so many ways like we can connect as people, but we don't actually like acknowledge how diverse we are. Because I think as like growing up as an Afro-Peruvian like person, and always having to explain that there are Black people in Peru seems so odd to me, when if we in history class actually learned that okay, slavery just brought Black people everywhere, then it wouldn't be such a shock. But also the fact that people don't feel the need to document those individuals is really disappointing. But that's when I started like taking photography seriously. So when I realized that I want to like show this part of the world to people. Like I remember that I wanted to get into film before I got into photography, but then like access to film just wasn't as easy.
Totally.
But like you can take a picture with your cell phone was like back at then. And then I joined this photography program, Youth for Change in Regent Park, which is like giving like free art programs for youth. They have like they have fashion one, they have like all these other ones, photography one. Yeah, my first film, oh, you know what, this does connect, because my first film that I did was on my cell phone, and it was called like Navidad, which was Christmas that I spent in Peru. And it was just like it's like I guess like a documentary kind of thing, but not a documentary, because it was just showing the show like what a depiction of a Afro-Peruvian family would spend Christmas. Yeah, so that was my first film that I did. But yeah, it's kind of hard for me to think about how I got into things specifically, because then I think for like a big thing for me as an artist is kind of like sometimes you're like, okay, this makes sense as this medium, like I have to like create it because that's what's accessible to me in that moment. Like the poem that I'm writing right now, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, an opportunity came to me to to produce something, and I pitched to do this poem, and now I'm going to be like producing it, and like actually like record it and share it with people. And I could have done any medium that I wanted to, but I felt the need to, like, because I'm in such a writing mode right now, that's the way I'm expressing how I'm feeling. When I was filming my family for like my film Navidad, it was just like, in the moment I was witnessing such joy around me. I'm like, I have to capture this. What do I have in front of me? It's my phone. So I recorded everything and made a little short for it.
Yeah,
I feel that's so beautiful how you say capture the moments. Because I was gonna ask you that about how you decide either first comes the idea or first comes the medium, but they seems like you have them really, really connected, like they come even at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's not like a premeditated thing. It feels like I have like a story in my head. Like a lot with my plays that I write, it's like I hold on to like the story, like the idea of the story in my head for a really long time, and then all of a sudden I start writing it. But I don't know, in the moment I don't know if I'm actually thinking about whether or not it should be a play, but I feel like it can transform into anything that it needs to be, depending on like, okay, I really need to tell this story, so I don't have time to write a play, or I don't maybe have access to a computer at that moment, but I may have my camera and I can, or I have a pencil and I can just write about it. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. No, I'm hearing that you're just an artist. You have just like a really strong artist spirit and you're like, how do I express this? That's basically what I see. I hope you don't judge yourself for being multidisciplinary. I don't know, because the little note that you sent us was like, I don't know why, but is it something you're worried about, or is it something that you embrace, or yeah.
Yeah, it is something that I've worried about, I think, for at least the past couple of years, because the reason I think that I decided to audition for theater school to join a conservatory program is because I'm like, I need to be disciplined in one thing and I have to be really good at it. And then once I'm really good at that, then I can start introducing the next thing. And then, but I think I've just come to realize that, because I can't do that. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
I have to do not everything, because I don't do everything at the same time, but like a lot of my projects are ongoing, or like I still like they're still very important to me, and I still need to. I think when I neglect those other parts of myself, it makes doing the one thing, acting, really hard if I don't also take the time to meet with other people and collaborate on a movie or write a play. Because in my first year of theater school, I made Black Girl in Search of God, and
Wow.
like while I was in school, and everyone's like, "Why are you doing this?" And it's like, no, I have to tell this story because I read Jeanette Sears' Black Girl in Search of God, and I was so moved by it, and just the idea of like not having to find God within this image of a necessarily like this white man, but within yourself, within your community. That was a really profound message to me, and I wanted to capture that through film. And then I also wrote a play in first year with Tarragon's Young Playwrights Unit, Boom, which is the one about, especially in the times that we're living in today, like it's a play that I haven't finished writing. I did my first draft and had a reading with it and everything, but like I have to go back and make revisions, and like knowing that I was thinking about like how Black girls are treated in educational spaces and dealing with issues of police brutality, and like I knew that it was a problem, like I always knew that, but it's just interesting to see like how the world is shifting right now around those conversations, where before it felt like, oh, no one's really paying attention to it except for my community, and like no one's trying to help us. So what are ways that I can find solutions, through my art, by expressing like stories that, amplify those voices, but not also, I don't want to trigger people also, because like the background behind that story was when I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and the janitor actually attempted to blow up the school. This is why it's called Boom. So
Whoa.
I originally wanted the play to just be about like, why did he do it? Like to be kind of like a mystery thing. But then as I was writing, I realized that the story actually was more in the story behind like the girls. The main character, she, is homeless, and like it kind of centers around her, but a lot of like who she is rooted in my mother, which I did not like expect. But I think that's like the magic thing about writing, like it just kind of reveals so many things and you don't know until after you've written it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in different like youth-led programs through the city. Is there any like youth-led programs that if anybody listens to it, you're like, I recommend young artists, like you should apply to this?
Programs that I would really recommend for youth is City Youth Academy with Soul Pepper, because it was like the first time where I was introduced to just like, even though you're studying, like you're interested in acting, like you don't have to go to that program for acting. It could be like you're interested in directing, you're interested in scenography, like any different elements of theater, and you work together to put on a show at the end. So I think it's just like giving you all these tools in order to put on a show together, and it's coming from your voice, and it feels like, and it's a very safe space. And yeah, it's led by Jennifer Villavarde. And they usually hire someone who's also a youth in theater. So if you don't feel comfortable, talking to an adult about like if you're having issues or you have questions about entering this field, you can talk to the younger person who's closer to your age. And that was really helpful for me, that space. And I think gave me the confidence to apply for theater school because I didn't have much experience outside of that. Or like I used a lot of playwriting, not a lot of acting.
Yeah.
Another program, I wasn't a part of it because I was too old, but I think TIFF Next Wave is a really good one, because they give teenagers the opportunity to really like dive into film like internationally, because I think a lot of what we consume comes from the United States when like there's young people all over the world creating content that is like really pushing narratives that I think we need to amplify. And I've collaborated with them for my short film, so I have like experience working with them, and they do really cool programming that I've been able to attend as well, just as a youth person. So because they curate their own film festivals, so it's not like TIFF, where it's like all the big names and celebrities, but like TIFF, like the youth one, and it's even though it's smaller, it's I think equally as powerful.
Yeah. No, totally. Like I'm hearing a lot that youth-led things is like something that really resonates with you or something that means a lot to you. And when I think of like youth, like, young people coming together and making art, it's like a different power dynamic, like you said, than someone just telling you what to do and going here and there.
I would agree 100%. And I think it's really important, like the difference between the Youth Academy and TIFF Next Wave is like you're like in charge of creating the space in TIFF Next Wave, and then in like the City Youth Academy, you're the one like taking in all the things that were curated for you. Yeah, so I think having those two different spaces are really important for young people. And another one I would recommend is the AGO Youth Council, and that's another one where it's like it's youth led, like they're curating all the activities that are being held there, but you can just attend one of their programming and learn how to like do something, or get a background on how to identify secondhand clothing that's like actually from the faraway past, not like, oh, it's from the 90s, like that's vintage.
Vintage.
But not vintage. So
yeah,
there's a lot of things, especially in Toronto, like we're really lucky for the amount of access that we have here for young people. But it's also really hard to like know about it, I've noticed. Because when I was in high school, I didn't know any of these things existed until like I graduated and was seeking out things for myself.
And you grew up in Toronto, is that right? Like
I grew
downtown?
up in Toronto.
Amazing. Okay, and now you moved to Montreal because you are studying in the acting stream of National Theatre School.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so like how has your experience been so far? You're entering your last year, right? In the fall.
Yes.
As a person who's not from Toronto or Canada, it's like, so the National Theatre School of Canada is like wow, like it's like the big school, right? Like,
Yeah, like a lot
yes.
of people like to say, oh, it's the Juilliard of Canada.
Oh yes, I heard that from Camila.
Like, yeah, and it's funny. My teacher this year, she was like, "No, Juilliard is the NTS of the States."
Okay.
Oh my god! Like I'm like, no one really says that, but that's like I think
It's a good
sometimes
attitude.
Canadians, we don't like see ourselves as like the like the pinnacle or like
Yeah.
it's like we're always like comparing ourselves to what's happening in the States when we need to like kind of own our own voice.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you feel going into your last year? How are you approaching it?
I'm approaching it. I think I'm very excited to enter my final year. All the conversations happening in theater right now, like a huge part for me was, even though I'm just like it's hard because you're like I'm just a student. Like I don't have any power. I'm just there to study acting and get my certificate and then go. NTS is a space that I feel like really encouraging diversity. But I think like what we're witnessing right now is that a lot of theater institutions, like they don't really know how to, like especially in the schools, because that's where you're building people to become professionals. Because a lot of us are going in with not that much experience or maybe even knowledge. Like you guys read my blog post that
your Twitter
the
thing
Twitter one.
Yeah.
And a big thing for me was like when Robert Lepage came to our school, a lot of students, especially the students of color, didn't know who he was or didn't know like the background that happened like the summer before. He came to our school where like a lot of people were talking about how he appropriated Black and Indigenous voices, and he didn't like he's never apologized for the things that he's done through his art or taken accountability for like how damaging his the content that he's tried to like or he has put out into the world. And so a lot of students like spoke up about that and asked for the educators to like disinvite him because he wasn't getting paid. He was just coming like as kind of a favor to one of those people who were in power at the time, or who are still who are still at the power. Oh my god, I feel like it's a sensitive thing.
Yeah, of course, it is sensitive.
Yeah, so there was an emphasis of like we need to have these conversations, and yeah, we do need to have these conversations. But if you're having a conversation with someone who doesn't believe that slavery ever happened in Canada, it was just like you're just like talking to someone who's not actually listening to you.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not really having a conversation because no one's willing to like be enlightened by what the other person's saying or actually taking it in. So it felt like it was more important to bring this guy who's just so famous internationally. And because in Canada, it's such a big thing when someone from Canada is big outside of Canada. So it's like, okay, like we'll just excuse the fact that he's so problematic because we can have a little chat with him, but like he doesn't take accountability for all of his wrongdoing. So I'm just, as a Black student, I'm sitting at the back of the room watching my Black and Indigenous classmates go up to, try to confront this man, and like no one's doing anything. And then at the end, like teachers are congratulating these people of color for standing up to him, but it's like we had him because you brought him here.
Yeah, why did you put us in that position in the first place?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and also it's like why didn't one of the teachers go up to speak to him? Like, why are the students put in the position to confront him when like it just feels like we're not at a professional level yet, right? So maybe some of us are, because you can come to NTS at any age. There's not really an age limit, but it just seems very odd to me that like I still haven't received an apology from my administration for that, like from my school. Like I was really devastated by it, and I know a lot of students were, and no one was willing to say that was something like kind of messed up for us to do. And like it's just like theater school in general is really hard because you are opening parts of yourself that you like, even just dealing with your voice.
Oh, it's so emotional.
It's so emotional.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're bringing up like ancestral like trauma, intergenerational traumas coming out from just like exploring a character who's a slave, right? And then you're in the room maybe having a panic attack, or like you really want to leave the space, you can't be in this like working through this, and they're like, no, like stay in the room, you have the tools, breathe through it, but you're like, I have to stop because this is actually damaging to me, and you don't understand because you don't have my experience.
Yeah.
So there's those situations of like not knowing how to navigate that, or just even the simple microaggression of like, I want to wear my do-rag in class, and then your teacher tells you to take it off because it's going to affect your voice, but it's on your head. So but you know, and then having to kind of like argue about it, and then finally the teacher being like, okay. And then like, I'm not like I understand that we're all learning. I'm not trying to say like, oh, like they shouldn't have done that or whatever. Like, you know, that it's new. You've never seen a student come in with a do-rag before because you haven't had that many Black students come to this school. You know, or not all Black students wear do-rags. So
yeah.
So it just seems like insteed of trying to be more understanding and open, it was immediately like trying to shut down. And I just think there needs, these like theater institutions need to bring in outside help, like people who are because like just hiring someone who's of color to come in to chat about it, like I don't think that's enough. I think you need to like actually pay someone to talk with the students, talk with the teachers, and understand the system of how the school works, and then implement actual solutions that can actually create change in the space so that it can feel more safe, and we can be more open, and we can explore all these parts of ourselves. But with that blog post that I made, it was like, Angelique is this, like, she's a big, like a line that I really love from that thing that I wrote was, like the struggle wasn't playing a slave. The struggle comes from playing a 3-dimensional character who just happens to be a slave. Yes. Because the many times that I've played a slave before, they haven't been 3-dimensional. So I didn't actually have to dig deep into what that character was going through because the writer didn't. So it was just like, oh, I'm just a slave, you know, I'm in the background, no one's really paying attention to me, and now I'm the lead. I'm the lead of the story, and I'm being raped, I'm being whipped, I lose my babies, you know, and in the end, I'm lynched and burned to death. Like, so it's hard navigating that just as a Black person, trying to figure out how do I give this justice without hurting myself?
Yeah.
And then you have your other classmates who are white who will have to do all these things to you. And they're also going through this white guilt and not understanding I can't say the N-word. I don't want to say the N-word, but it's like, you have to, because that's the story. That's the truth, you know? You have to whip me because that's the truth. You have to, you know, rape me but the thing is, you're not doing it for real. You're acting. But the story that we're telling is very real. So it was very hard. Like that space it was very hard to do that play. Yeah, and, you know, this was first year, you know, and I'm going into my third year now.
Oh my God. I can't even believe that was like, so let's start small. Here's this role for you. That's a huge undertaking.
Something that you just said stuck with me, that if your teachers came up to you and be like, you have the tools, like breathe and blah, 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 that shouldn't be the thing. Shouldn't we all have the tools, and like it shouldn't be on the person that's having the panic attack to resolve it for themselves? Like that was like,
it's a hard thing, because I think when like because like breath is like a tool that they do give you, like if like because if you breathe through it, you'll bring oxygen in and it'll help you like stabilize. But I think when it's not just that it's oh, this is tough, it's like, oh my god, this is actually paralyzing. Sometimes breathing is just not enough, and I actually have to stop and just take a moment. And maybe even we have to take a moment as a class to just sit down and have a talk about what I just went through. But there's a huge thing, I feel like, when you're in a conservatory program, it's very much like individual. They don't want to bring in the collective voice together. They don't want to, because even though we're a community, it's very much like, no, you're all on your own paths. You're all figuring out your own artistic process. We can't really bring in your trauma into the room. Like that's like the conversation. And it's like, I don't want to, interrupt other people's process, but I think me having a panic attack in the space is probably more distracting than for me to leave the room and just take time for myself. And then maybe we could have a quick chat about it as a class of what it was to be a slave. Because the thing for me is, when my mother came to this country, she was sold to a family in Brampton to work on a farm. So this is not like I'm looking at my ancestors a long, long, long time ago. It's literally like I'm thinking about this character is literally went through something my own mother, the woman who gave birth to me, went through.
It's not like some imaginary past that doesn't, like, that's so far. Yeah.
Exactly. And so and then you look today, like we're watching lynchings happen on cameras. Like I felt like at the time, no one was acknowledging that we were living in a time of terror at that point. It was like, that was a far away thing.
Yeah.
You can separate. And I don't know, I feel like now in third year, I could handle that character a lot better than I could have in first year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's so interesting, and thank you so much for being so open and about this, Easy. It's really, really interesting to talk about, because I think sometimes my struggle with art is like, some people think things are so like intellectual and cerebral and like have their time and space in this little box, and they're going to give it like 20 minutes, but another collaborator is like, this is really important and huge, and like it's not a fantasy. It's not just interesting, fascinating, aesthetically pleasing. It's like a really important thing for me to be able to make art, and like those two artists, it's hard to have a conversation to meet. And I feel like we're having a lot of conversations about leadership right now in the arts, in theater, and like what actually healthy leadership could look like for artists, and not just one particular kind of artist in this scene right now. So I'm wondering, did you have access to teachers of color or mentors of color at the conservatory, or Black specifically?
I did. Like the teacher who was teaching that Angelique, he was a Black man, and I have another teacher who was working on us like from first year all the way through third year on our creation project. It's Audrey Zina Mendiela, who's like, oh my god, just like blows my mind.
Yeah, like a legend.
So like we've had, but I just think the issue for a lot of, like, I think my fellow classmates and I is like, there's no one who's like in a position of like power, like a lot of like invited artists, like they'll be with us for a couple of weeks and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Or we have like this one person who we can go to, but like it's hard to like meet with this one person, because maybe not all of us are comfortable with this one person, or totally. It's just like there's so many of us, how can we all access this one person, especially if they're a working artist and have their own things to deal with. So I think people very much wanted someone higher up to reflect kind of what we look like, because when you audition to National Theatre School, which is why I was so excited to go to this school, was that it was how diverse was the people actually picking who was going to come into the school. Okay. Like it's not like when I went to Ryerson audition, it was like old white people.
You mean like in the audition room on the panel that you performed for? Okay.
and not that being old and white is a bad thing, you know, like I don't want to.
But it represents a certain kind of space you're going to go into
Exactly.
and level of safety, maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I remember just being like, okay, well, that's like, I guess the space that I would be entering. But at NTS, I remember there was a Black woman, there was an Indigenous man, there was like, even the people that I was auditioning with were very diverse. So I knew that this was a space focused on bringing those voices into the room. I just found out recently that like our head of music has changed to like it's going to be a Black man for a year, which I'm really excited about, but it's just for a year. And I think what's interesting about the conversations around leadership right now is like a lot of people are actually resigning their positions in hopes that like you'd bring a person of color to take on my position. I'm not saying that like you have to resign, like, but sometimes it's kind of like that's, you know, if you're seeing that the institution that you're working at isn't making those changes, maybe just you leaving gives space to other voices.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, I'm not saying that you don't deserve to be in that position or you should give up your position. Just, you know, like I understand how hard of a decision that could be. And especially as artists, like to have a sustainable job, to like work at a school, you know, you're going to have that paycheck. It's really important. So, but I think like one of the big problems that people had was that those who have the big titles, like the artistic director, the CEO, like those people don't look like you. But then I am being introduced to people like Audrey Zena Mandela, right? Like I'm it's not like
it's never just one thing. It's complex.
It's never just one thing.
Yeah.
So it's a funny space, and even like what we're learning, it's coming from a very Eurocentric space. So it's like we're doing ballroom, which is wonderful, right? But like maybe can we like do some African dance? You know, like can we bring in maybe artists to teach us different ways of practice? When I think of DB Young and Anti-Africa, like this is someone who's an educator and you know, very anti-colonial, creates like a very safe space, really gives, you know, young people the, you know, this is a really space of like inclusion, but also healing. And implementing that in the practice and showing maybe people of color, this is another pathway to, you know, tackling being a professional in the world. It doesn't have to be this, you know, Shakespeare, Chekhov, very, you know, it can be anything you want it to be. And, but also I think maybe people like that may not want to enter NTS's institutional space. So I can't expect those people to want to, you know, come either. So it's a weird thing where you kind of have to be like, sometimes the good outweighs the bad in a way of like, I know what I'm consuming. And so I have to be ready. Like when I leave, then I can explore all sorts of avenue and take the pieces that I want, you know, with me. And what I don't want to keep with me, I can just let go. So yeah, that's been really interesting. And as a student, like I feel like it's my responsibility as a Black person to give tools for the next generation of students coming in, especially if I don't see more systemic changes happening. I have to like, what little can I give to support those people when they're coming in? Because, you know, a Black caucus was created at my school. The fact that we can create a Black caucus, that there's enough students to do that, means that we can have our like space to create, you know, change for ourselves. But yeah, it's a hard thing.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sometimes thankful that I didn't go to theater school.
Absolutely.
Monica, you work in theater now, but you kind of created your own like learning path through different programs, right?
But my thing, I think it is, and it's something that I see really similar within like how you were explaining your art, AC, is for me, what I understood really early was like, I am a storyteller. Mediums might change. My point is to tell the story. But I do hear stories about people here that went to theater school. And I'm like, I'm so grateful that when I moved here, my theater journey was youth-led programs. Like a lot of youth-led programs, what was teach me to be where I am. It's a tricky, yes, because a lot of people still in rooms are like, you didn't have the education, or you don't have the connections, or you don't have this. Do I care? No. So I keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is also tricky because like showing up and showing up and showing up, it's also a whole art itself.
Yeah.
To give up, like that's easy, but to continue to show up, that's the hard thing.
Absolutely.
And a youth-led program that you made me think of was the Paprika Festival, because they actually provide mentorship, and usually the people who who are the mentors, they kind of reflect what Toronto, like the diversity actually looks like. And one of my mentors was Miquelon Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Cool.
after I finished that program, he gave me the opportunity to write a play with Factory Theater, and I got to meet Nina Lee Aquino, and I wrote a whole play, and then I got to meet all these other artists, but like I was like 19, 20 years old, like had no experience, but I think that's really interesting when like you don't have any background, but people are still, they understand the need for those people to be in the room and in the space, and giving those space to those storytellers to enter the room, even if they're young, but also saying, Jesus, this is a young Black person who has something to say, and I want to, arm them with tools to be in this industry. So,
And that's so important as like you mentioned mentors. Like I talk about that a lot with Beatriz Pisano, because for me it was like one person that actually that's I think sometimes the beauty and sadness of it is like if you have one person who believes in you, it's such a blessing, but it's also it shouldn't be one person. So it's this thing of like but I wanna talk because I want to talk about this person. So you mentioned Victoria Santa Cruz saved your life.
oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing Victoria Santa Cruz to our life, because after you mentioned it, we researched.
Easy. How did Victoria Santa Cruz save your life?
Well, for me, when I was really young, like in the 3rd grade, this is really sad, but like I would say things to my mom a lot of like, I want to die. Like, I don't want to live anymore. And I didn't understand why I was feeling those feelings. And it's like, even to this day, I'm kind of like, why was I so sad? And like, I still deal with like depression, right? Like to this day. But I was lucky to have a mom who introduced me to therapy really, really young. And because my mom also has her, issues with mental health, and so she recognized it in me, and she knew that I have to do something about this now while she's young. And I don't know, just like I think through those conversations, because I went to therapy also with my mom and having discussions with her, and then one day out of the blue, like Victoria Santa Cruz came to my mother's mind, and the poem Me Gritaron Negra, and how like, and I remember hearing it as a little girl and being like, oh my God, there's someone who like understands what I feel. And like, not only does she understand what I feel,
Yeah.
she wants me to know that I am powerful.
Yeah.
And that I am worthy.
Yeah.
And that I can ignite change. And she does it through storytelling and and just hearing the sound of the cajon and knowing that this is an instrument that was created by Afro-Peruvians, or maybe Africans who came to Peru
100%.
unwillingly,
Yeah.
but knew that they are part of this community now, and through their magic was able to create something that could be connected to the culture that now they have been forced to be a part of. And so yeah, she saved my life, because I think without that poem, like there have been so many moments where I had to like go back and just to listen to her voice, to just remind me like the kind of like that don't give up thing, like that keep pushing, and to know that it's in Spanish, that's really, I don't see Afro-Peruvians a lot, but I know they exist because my entire family looks like them.
Yes.
When I go
Yes.
through, I walk around, I see them. It's not like they don't exist.
Yeah.
And I have this book called Radical Latin Women, and like she's the only Black woman in that entire volume of women. And I think that's mainly because they're not documented, and that's why I'm very like specific about wanting to document those individuals. But yeah, that poem, it's just, and it's just so uplifting. Like it's like, because at the beginning of the poem, it's so like oh my God, like this
It's so
person,
real.
like it's so real. You can just see it. You just know that happened in real life.
Yeah, like just the like she's like, I was 7 or maybe I was 5. It doesn't matter. Just that, I'm like, it feels like a real conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So human, and it's so important. I'm so grateful that there's some archive of her that we can even find on YouTube. That there's like a video of her doing it. Like, and I'm excited for your work and all the work that you've already produced. Like, you know, it's important. It's important.
Yeah. Thank you, Camila.
I'm not even joking a little bit. So take it.
Yeah. And I think she's another reason why I went to theater school, because she's someone who I think I was reading a lot about her, and she went to Paris for a while and actually studied like teatro for a bit. And like it's someone like this is not only is she Afro-Peruvian, but she actually left her country to, give herself permission to, dig deep about the practice that she's doing. But at the same time, she also realizes, I don't want to focus on this Eurocentric way of storytelling. Even though I went to Europe, I'm coming back to my own country, and I'm going to create my own, theater company, and we're going to reimagine, our history, because it has been erased. And through movement, through dance, through music, she was able to kind of create this folklore for us, and a lot of people try to like say, oh, well, it's not real because she wasn't alive back in the old time. She's like, well, no, screw that. Like, I'm gonna create what should have been preserved, and I'm going to amplify this voice, and and I think like I have so much respect and love, like deep love for her. And I think she's someone that like deserves so much, but she's not here with us anymore, but she was like, she was alive like not too long ago.
Yeah, I think 2014 we were reading Monica, I think.
Yes.
So it was so recent. Yeah.
So recent.
Yeah. I was reading something the other day that like black and white pictures can trick your mind into thinking that something was so much in the past, but we have a really bad case of cultural amnesia up here in the Americas, and we gotta just always think critically about that, because she had a huge influence on just the generation before us,
Yeah. And then to think of like, because like my mom remembered that poem, but like she never like, as like no one in school, or like when she was growing up in like, growing up in Canada, because she came to Canada when she was 19, it's like, not that she forgot it, but like it was in the back of her mind, but because it wasn't in front of her, like it was just like being pushed back. And then she sees her daughter having this struggle and realized, oh wait, what's that thing that like was so powerful that made me feel better? Let me introduce this to my daughter. Like, and that's when I know like art can save lives. Like I think when I like sometimes like, is that too dramatic? But like no. Like I could have, like I was going through a really dark thing, and that took me to a whole other space.
Yeah. That, I don't know, my heart just feels huge right now.
I know, me too. No, yeah, I understood that. I mean, I got the story, but I was like, I have that with Chabela Vargas, but she used to sing rancheras and boleros in a really predominant like man space, and she was such a lesbian. Like it was this thing of like, I was like, oh, my hero, like here she is. I love it, and I think I'm gonna bring it back, but it's like talking about how your mom. I was looking at the video you sent us of you singing, and then I love that at the end the credits said "camera work, my mom." It gave me so much joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's there. She's out there helping you. It's awesome.
Yeah, like I've been like really blessed, because like my mom was someone who's like very much was like, you're gonna be a lawyer, you're gonna be a teacher one day, or like you're gonna be like, she was so like so sure that I was gonna be one of those things.
Yeah.
And I think I'm lean towards educator because like I'm starting to feel like a passion for that. But the thing with my mom, it's like she's always supported me. And she's actually kind of, I feel like, the subject of a lot of what I create, because I think a lot of my art comes from my own personal experiences and my own like the struggles that I deal with, and trying to, you know, grapple with it. Yeah, she's just like my biggest muse, and it's just, I'm very blessed to have her wanting to support me, because, you know, it's interesting you bringing up, you know, being, you know, like finding this you know, Mexican lesbian, you know, entering this male dominated space, and it's something that like what I've been blessed with my mom is like, because I think she always knew that I was queer when I was growing up, and she would always be like, you know, if you're gay, like I'll always love you, like because you know, growing up in Latino like Latinx communities, like one, you're Black, and like there's so much racism going on, and it's so weird when you're like the one Black person in these people's lives, and they'll say racist things around you, and then, you know, you dress masculine, and then, you know, then they say things like, oh, you know, you better be careful, like she might be, you know, not straight. And then my mom, she chooses to love, like, even those people, like she knows how ignorant they are, even she like even understands her own like biases of, you know, growing up in Peru,
Yeah.
you know, because you know, not only is there racism, but there's homophobia. But she, you know, she tells me the story, sorry, kind of going off topic, about my grandmother. One day they were walking with, like, when my mom was little, and my grandmother was walking with my mom, and then this a trans woman came up to her, and she was I don't know if she was like singing or making a lot of noise, but my grandma noticed that she was drunk, and so my grandmother like started to take my mom to go to the other direction, and then the trans woman, you know, confronted my grandmother and was like, "You're only doing this because I'm a trans woman. How dare you?" Da, 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 da. And then after, my grandmother said, "No, it's because you're drunk, and I don't want my daughter to see that." And I think when I think about that, it's like, oh, I think my grandmother would love me too. I think she would, because, you know,
Yeah.
it's so scary to come out, you know,
Absolutely.
and to have a mom who not only accepts you for being not, you know, an artist, you know, like I'm not pursuing the Canadian dream, American dream, but also accepts me for being different in all sorts of different ways. But it's not different, because the thing is, it's like people don't come out being straight.
I know.
Like that's not a thing. Like it's not. It'll never be. Well, yeah, it'll never be a thing. But I just feel her support in all avenues of my life, and so, you know, and she's my muse, and she's like at the center of everything. Every, like, my favorite character, I'm like, that's my mom, and I'm sure other people might not see the connection, but I know deep inside, like love is what raised me, and that's what influences the things that I create. So yeah, that's kind of like a weird go around of what I was trying to say, because I think I'm still trying to unpack it for myself.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, she's the camera. Like in my Black Girl in Search of God, she does a lot of, she's like an assistant credit, like
Does she like helping you with your projects? Or yeah.
I think so. Because I think my mom's an artist on the inside too. Like she helped me make this blanket. Like it's up there, and like she's like, you pick all the colors, but you know, because I'm not good with colors, you're good with colors. But then I'll order, and she's like have opinion about how the order should go. And so, or like if I'm like, she recorded me singing a song, and oh wait, that was what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Me singing, and like she was like directing me a little bit. No, look over there, like this is like, think about this, and you know, I think in a lot of us, like in our bodies, like I almost think almost every single person is an artist, like in our own different ways. But she wasn't given the freedom to explore that part of herself where I was, because I was born here in Canada. So yeah, I think in a lot of ways she kind of explores that part of herself through me and with me.
I love what you're saying. I'm not out to my parents, so it's like, but I did, because my dad is a tricky man in a lot of ways, with a lot of stuff. He's a really set macho Mexican man, like. But when I moved here and I started doing all my lesbian short films, I credit him as an executive producer from all of them.
Why?
Because he paid for them. He doesn't know. Yes. And I always think it's like this weird joke that I made to myself, like, he is supporting me. He doesn't know how, but he does like gay people in my story.
I don't know. You both are really making me think, like, the definition of high art and like good art. When we talk about the pinnacle of high art here, it's like Juilliard. It's like, yeah, Shakespeare. It's these structures that are so separate from us and our reality, and things I find really beautiful in my life is like, yeah, people and my lived experience, and like, what is our folk stories, like our folklore that we create for ourselves.
And we're losing like our like, when I think of Victoria Santa Cruz, like, is gone, like, well, how are we gonna continue that for the future? Because, like, you know, Toni Morrison's gone, James Baldwin is gone. Like I think about that a lot, about like us creating the next, you know, wave, I guess, of what it means to be us in this period of time.
Yeah, we are part of their legacy,
and I feel like it's like whatever we create, it will always be connected to the past, but like it's focused on giving, like, nourishing the future.
Yeah.
And so that's something, like, that's a big thing that I've been thinking about lately. Yeah. So it's cool that you brought that up. Like a show that I really loved that I saw last year was I have it, like, the ticket somewhere because I saved it because I loved it so much. But Agosto Bitter?
Oh, Chicho.
Oh, Chicho, yes, Chicho. Oh my God, I was watching. I'm just laughing. I'm dying of laughter the entire time. Like I understood everything that he was talking about. And then I think about when I'm in theater school, and sometimes my teachers are kind of like, "You're being too loud right now. You're laughing too loud." And then I'm like, "What?" And like, okay. And so, but then when I'm in a space, where it's Latinx, it's queer, there's avocados, and I can just laugh as loud as I can, and then he'll look at me and like acknowledge me in the space, and then I feel so like that's love to me right there, like as an audience member, because I think the audience is also part of the show. But then sometimes I feel like in Eurocentric spaces, at Stratford stages, those places, like, you have to be very quiet as an audience member. You have to be very still. You have to not react to whatever's going on. But I come from a culture where everyone's very loud, everyone's joking on top of each other, everyone's dancing really close, and it's a different energy. So yeah, sometimes like cultures, I guess, clash, but I don't think we have to disrespect each other's way of absorbing art. But I think when I think of Chicho, the show Chicho, I'm like, that's something that's like I hold close to my heart, and I hope one day more and more people get to witness that, more people who come from backgrounds like mine, because I feel like shows like that are kind of created for us, but it's like I feel him speaking to me.
Totally.
Him speaking to me, not necessarily to just like a white audience where I'm supposed to try to insert my background into this like reality that I actually don't fit in, because if I was alive during this time, I would be a slave, right? So, but then I have to reimagine, and that also gives me power in a different way.
So just to make sure we talk about all the beautiful projects you have going on right now, one of them is a photo project called X. And I feel like that ties into what we're talking about right now. So how did this project come to be, and what are you exploring in this photo project?
So how it came to be was my friend Alexia was looking for artists for this. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was originally called Raíces. I think we actually named it Raíces, like the project in the end. But it was like bringing artists from different parts of Latin America, like backgrounds Latin America, but are Canadian, to come together and to create this like group exhibition. And the idea that I came up with was that I wanted to photograph people who were part of this community, but felt like they were other. And so the title X actually came after I had my talk with you, Camila. And like I remember the when I was interviewing you, because the important thing for this project for me was I actually wanted to sit down with the people that I was photographing, because I didn't want to just take the picture and be like, this person feels other. Like I actually wanted to understand what was their journey and why did they feel that way. And then by the end of the conversation, because we had this conversation, we actually felt connected. So like I feel like the otherness kind of went away, not completely, but like it was like, oh, we're building this community by just sitting with each other. And we may not look the same, you know, we have very distinct, different experiences, but we're part of this Latinx community. And the big thing for me with my conversation with you, Camila, was like, I was like, what does Latinx mean to you? And you said, I love that word because in the X, you can kind of put whatever you want in it because X marks the spot. And I was like, oh, yeah, the power is in the X. You can put whatever you want in there and no one can, you know, take that away from you. And so I just wanted to name the project X. And at the exhibition, I featured like Afro-Latinx mothers. But they're, one was my mom, one was Sylvia Argentina, and then the other one was Isabel. And they all come from like different backgrounds. They are all fighting like different ways and moving through the world. But they were all so powerful. And the way that they're each like looking directly into the camera, like you can't avoid that this person exists. And it's an ongoing project that I believe in my soul. Like that's something that I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to sit with people. And it's kind of hard through like COVID to think about how I will like maintain that. But even sitting here with you guys, I feel so much more connected to the both of you.
I'm so happy we got to talk today. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Firstly, I'm like so honored that was something that resonated with you so much, because you took that and you heard that in a way that you created that art, you know? So I'm just really honored to be a part of that. And I think at Luna, internally, we're talking a lot about the word Latinx because it's not like a perfect word, you know, because we got Latin in front of it. And it's like, what's that about? So, but I actually just hearing you say that makes me think just the X is my favorite part. So maybe I'm just an X. Maybe I'm not Latinx, I'm just X, you know?
Or it can be X.
X!
Some people are like, that's
you
an
see?
English letter.
Yeah! Okay, X. All right, workshopping it. That's so awesome. Okay, and for listeners, you can check out some of the images of this project at an Instagram profile that EC set up. The links will be in the show notes, so please go take a look at it. Monica, do you want to ask the last one?
We were asking our previous guest to ask the questions for our next guest. This is a long, long question by Jose Torres Tama. He is an Ecuadorian American poet based in New Orleans. What are you going to do to continue our radical, revolutionary, theatrical perspective? To be sure our voices are heard on all the stages, wherever you might be in your particular country.
And what are you going to do in terms of making sure that you're not erased within that patriarchal power structure of the Anglo-Saxon, Aryan, Christian male narrative?
Yeah. That's a boss question.
I know, right? He's a cool guy.
Because I'm so young, it's like, how do I be am I radical? And I think about artists like Lido Pimienta a lot. So, and how similar to Princess Nokia, she brings, you know, trans women, non-binary people of color towards the front of her shows when she's performing. And also she has this thing, I listened to her talk once, and she talked about how like your art has to be political in order for it to actually, you know, say something, because we're in very, you know, political times. And so when I think for myself, how I want to implement being, you know, radical and making sure that people from my community their voices are being heard, is being kind of like Michelon Rodriguez, and making sure that when I have opportunities to give space, I'm gonna prioritize those individuals, and to make sure that even though I'm bringing them into these spaces that are, you know, could be scary and very big and institutional, I want to make sure that I'm giving them the tools to handle that space. I'm not just bringing them in using their story and then maybe them feeling like no one took care of them, because there's specific individuals within our industry that I feel really focus on that. Like I remember seeing a show with Celia Green, had her show at Summerworks. Can't remember shows names. It was such
was it a solo show?
It was a solo show.
Yeah.
Is it what? No.
Wah wah wah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Donna Michelle St. Bernard was watching those at the same show. And I remember at the end, like after the talkback, I was crying, and then Donna Michelle St. Bernard took me to a Chinese restaurant where we sat and we ate and we talked, and like that to me is radical. Like taking the time to see the people in your community who may be feeling vulnerable, you know, who might need some guidance or just mainly just support one another. I think that's the radical thing is choosing to be that support, and to be that mentor, to be that space, that safe space for somebody when the world can feel so overwhelming around them. I think a big, like, to make sure that I'm not erased, just standing in my truth, because I think like the most powerful thing when I think about even Victoria Santa Cruz, and how like the powerful thing about that poem was that she was telling her story and standing in that 100%. I think for me as an artist, like not a lot of people actually know that I'm queer, for example, and like a lot of my work actually doesn't even grapple with that part of myself. And I think once I own all of those parts of myself, and through everything that I do, I think not only will my voice be more clear, but it's like less chance of it being interrupted. And even if it is interrupted, I won't stand for it to be, you know, walked over. Because a big thing that I think I did this year as being a student of theater school, is I called out my school on their anti-Blackness. And that wasn't just the, you know, like the blog post that I made, which was kind of speaking more about my journey of like playing a character. You know, I feel like there was a moment when it was February, when my friend Kalali and I, is a Black playwright at NTS, but she recently graduated, and we stood in front of the school, and like, you know, we didn't have a list of demands, because I think institutions are very afraid of that sort of thing, but we were very much like, you need to check yourself, because your Black students need support, like just so that you can ignore the fact that there is a problem. But unfortunately, you don't see steps towards actually fixing that until a Black man had to die. But I think as an artist, I'm proud to say that like I didn't have to wait for someone to die to speak up about those things. And I'm happy that the world's being like lit on fire kind of right now, kind of like, you know, Marie-Joseph Angelique lighting up, you know, old Montreal, burning it to the ground. It's kind of like, even though we don't actually know if she did that or not, you know, some people love to believe that she did. Some people hate that, you know, she was accused for something that we don't even know if she did it or not. But I think the like burning buildings down, like you think about in Minneapolis, you know, they burned down the police station, right? There was a police station. Like it's that theme of fire, and like not, and like keeping that flame going constantly. and being able to speak up to those in power. And I'm not saying to, it's not about doing it in a violent way. I'm saying fire, it's that fire within you, because you're the only one who can keep it going, because other people are going to constantly try to, wash it out with fire, but you know the truth for yourself. You know your story, you know how you're being treated, sometimes you don't even know what you need to support yourself, but you can call out when BS is happening. So I think that's the way to maintain my voice, and making sure that that won't be erased, because I always speak up for myself in whichever space that I occupy.
That's a pretty boss answer. Okay. This podcast is recorded in Toronto, or Dagarondo, the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Wendat Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and nations recorded and unrecorded.
We are deeply thankful to these nations for stewarding the land so that we might live in peace and respect for each other. As it is outlined in the Dish with One Spoon, One Pup, that all people who live here, settlers, indigenous folks, and others, must adhere to. Radio Luna Teatro is produced by Aluna Theatre with the support from the Metcalf Foundation, the Late Law Foundation, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council. Radio Luna Teatro is produced by Aluna Theatre with the support from the Metcalf Foundation, the Late Law Foundation, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council.
Aluna Theatre is Beatriz Pisano and Trevor Schwellness, with Sue Ballant and Gia Namens. Radio Aluna Theatre is produced by Camila Diaz Varela and Monica Garrido.
For more about Aluna Theatre, visit us at alunatheatre.ca, follow at Aluna Theatre on Twitter or Instagram, or like us on Facebook.
Follow and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever else you get your podcasts.